D drive, square zone. Yeah. Okay, I want to revert these changes, right? So I'd be using this. Okay, I have asked you one question, right? If I have created a file and if I switch between branches, what happens to that file? I have not added it to staging area. Yemuddi? Huh? What happens? Will the file be lost? In which branch it will present? Master branch lo untadi kada? We are not rolling the dice and asking you to just guess the number. Heads are tails are అడగట్లేదు నేను. ఏం జరిగింది అని అడుగుతున్నా. ఏం జరుగుద్దో ఊహించి చెప్పండి అంట్లా. What happens? Did no one tried? Pardon? File? File is created. Wonderful. Which branch it will be? I have created the file in master branch. Okay. I have not done anything. I have switched it to branch called as integration. Will that file be available there? No. అయితే మీకు తీరిక లేదన్నమాట. Okay, let us do this. So let me create a file. touch1.txt. Is the file available? Yeah. I do git checkout integration. Oh, I int, right? Is 1.txt available? It will not be part of any branch. The only files that will be part of the branch is the things that you have added to the staging area and then committed it. ఇది చేయడానికి ఖాళీ లేదా? డెవాప్స్ లో ఉద్యోగం కావాలి. ఎంతకాలం జీతం? ఎంత టైం పట్టింది? 2 minutes, right? Did it take more than that? ఒక ఫైల్ క్రియేట్ చేసి బ్రాంచ్ మార్చడానికి మనకు టైం లేదా? Guys, just relook at your strategies of your career. Okay. So that's your headache. Anyway, I'm not going to worry about it. Okay. Fine. So whenever you create a file, right, these files are present in unstaged area. So they do not belong to any branch. Okay. They would neither, Git will never worry about those files. Git will worry only about the files which you have added to the staging area. Git will never worry about the files which you have not added to the staging area, committed it. No. Okay. So ఎప్పుడు ఫైల్ presence ఒక branch కి ఎప్పుడు అవుతుంది? When you commit to that branch. Okay. For example, if I commit this file to the master, it will not be available in the integration. Okay. But if I don't do that commit operation, it is just dangling around here. It would be dangling around in every branch. Okay. Because Git is unaware of that file. For the Git to be aware of this file, you should add it to the staging area. అంతేనా? అందుకే Git add చేసేది. That's the reason. Okay. Fine. Now, tags. Okay. So you have been working on those branches, right? So we had this release or master, whatever you call it. Okay. Okay. And from here we had a branch that was created, which was integration branch or UAT branch. Okay. And from this you create some other branches, and this stuff goes on, right? Okay. This is a branch where you are giving releases to your customer. Okay. So I've given release version 1.2. So how can you identify that, okay, this is a version which I have given to the customer? Okay, there should be something around there, right? Okay. So what we would do is we would write on this branch with a permanent marker saying that this is a release which I had given on that day, and that process is called as tagging. Tagging is nothing but labeling it. On that commit, you are telling that this is a commit which I have given to Infosys. Okay, దాన్ని మార్చలేం. You can't change that commit. So basically on this branch here, I have given basically some version to customer. So I would just label it saying that release underscore 1.1. That's it. Okay, and I will continue working on the other branches and keep merging on this. Okay, so then I give release 1.2. So again I'll do the same job. I'll just write release underscore 1.2, and this cannot be moved. This is always committed or fixed to one commit ID. Okay, so tagging మనం దేనికి చేస్తాం, ఒక కమిట్ కి చేస్తాం. ఇప్పుడు రేపు పొద్దున్న రిలీజ్ 1.1 లో ఏదైనా ఇష్యూ వచ్చింది అనుకోండి, I can straight away go to that tag. I can move to that code by easily going with a tag called as git take me to the tag called as release 1.1. That's a purpose for that. Okay. So అక్కడ నుండి hard fix అయితే then I would create a branch from there and start working on. Are we getting it? Release 1.1 we have given. There is a serious issue. 1.2 also we released, but the customer wants us to fix on 1.1. Okay. So you would take that from a tag. Okay, tag is nothing but a label applied to a commit. Okay, so I want to see the history of our branch, what has happened. Okay, so git log, this will give us all, but this is quite too much, right? It is very difficult to read. So what I would do is git log, it should be one line there. Now it makes sense. Okay, and then so at the command line you would get these visuals. Okay, but if you want a better visual on Windows, you have to use git clients. You have to use what? Git clients. Git client. And there are two popular git clients. One is Tortoise Git, the other one is Source. Okay, so when it comes to server repositories, as of now, what is that we are using? GitHub. There is something called as GitLab also. You can go and create an account and do the same operations over here also. Okay, or you can create your own repository in your office. This is your own office's Git server. Okay, and then you have what is that Atlassian's product? 1 minute. Bitbucket, yeah, absolutely. So there is something called as Bitbucket from Atlassian. These are all server repositories. GitHub elago, Bitbucket kuda alage. Kakapothe GitLab, Bitbucket, what we can do is with GitLab you can have your own server repository, and GitLab can be installed in the office. Okay, they are not present at some other place. They can be present in your office. Okay, Bitbucket, it is from Atlassian, the same company who developed Jira. Okay, and the source tree is also from the same people. Okay, all of these are Gits. These are different vendors who sell Git. Okay, so you can create your repositories in any one of them. Okay, in any one of them. So let us see with respect to this Tortoise Git. Okay, how can I visualize my branches? Okay, so once to install Tortoise Git, what is that we need to do? Very simple. Go to Google and type Tortoise Git. That's it. Download this and you would get the interface. That's it. Nothing beyond it. Okay. You are seeing this green buttons and all of that, right? That is what the Tortoise Git tries to give you. And you are seeing Git, right? Tortoise Git. Yeah. And here there are revision graph and all of that. Just click on this revision graph. So this is what it is all about. Okay. And it gives you a visual way of doing everything. So Tortoise Git. Okay. Repo browser. So it says that, okay, you have these folders, these are your repositories, and what is that you have worked on. You can just get into all of this. Okay, you have loads and loads of options. For example, you can create branches from here also. Okay, for example, if you want to see the differences, git diff is a command, but that gives you in a command line, it is very difficult to find out changes. But if you use this, okay, then it will be very easy for us. So it is saying that show unversioned files, show ignore files, and all of that. Okay, and let me show you one easiest way of looking into differences. Start as git. Okay, show log. Okay, I can select any two revisions over here. Okay, right click, compare revisions. Okay, so it says that this is the only one file that has changed, and it tells that we have not written any content. Our files are empty, but if the files are present, it would tell you all the details in this. Okay, so this is a visual way of looking at it. Okay, but all of this internally happens via commands of git itself. Okay, so whenever I say show logs, it would be executing command called as git log. Okay, and then whenever I want to know differences between it, it would just do git diff, and it would try to portray the commands over here. This is a visual representation of whatever is happening on the command. But unfortunately, if you are asked to work on servers of Ubuntu, servers of Red Hat, you might not have UI. Then you can't have tortoise git or neither source tree. Okay, source tree nundi tortoise git nundi ilanti panlu easy ga cheyochu. For example, if I want to create a branch, git checkout -b and all of that is what we were doing, right? Now right click over here, tortoise git, and you should be able to see something called as branch over here somewhere. Create branch, absolutely. Okay, so you just say create branch, give the branch name. It looks more like a UI options. Okay, but please don't get used to this. This is evil. Okay, దీనివల్ల మీకు ఎటువంటి ఉపయోగం లేదు, ఇంటర్వ్యూలో కూడా పని అవ్వదు. At the final moment, once you know all the commands, it would be easy for you to work on any tools. Now it is easy because we know what is the branch which we are creating, from where we want to create that branch, and all of this. We understand this stuff. Okay, are we good? This tool is just to see differences. At a max, you would use this tool to compare differences between commits. That's the easiest way of looking about this. Don't do any other complicated options in this. Okay, and if you want to see the graph of how your commits are there, all of that stuff, you would be using this, but nothing beyond this. Okay, దీంతో ఇంక వేరే పనులు ఏమీ చేయమ్మా. Okay, చేయాల్సిన అవసరం కూడా లేదు because we know the command line options. Okay, but if you have loads and loads of changes, and if you really want to diff the file one by one, git diff command is very difficult because in the command line it will show you. So if you have a UI, it would be a better option. Okay, fine. Now one normal question. Okay, I have changed this file. Okay, I zip this folder and give this folder to you. Okay, so in this folder, as of now, if I do git status, oh, file save cheyaladena, wonderful. Yeah, if I do git status, it is showing something as readme is changed. I will zip this folder and send it to you. Will you be also seeing the same change? Yes or no? నేను ఈ ఫోల్డర్ మొత్తాన్ని జిప్ చేశాను, పంపించాను. Will you be also seeing the same status when you do git? How many of you say no? Okay, fine. So how git works basically? All of your changes are present in .git folder. So .git folder contains whatever you have last taken from the server. Okay, whenever you send the zip file, is this file part of this? Is this change whatever I have done is part of zip file? నేను జిప్ ఫైల్ చేసినప్పుడు దీని జిప్ క్రియేట్ చేసినప్పుడు ఈ రీడ్ మీలో నేను చేసిన చేంజ్ కనబడదా? కనబడుతుంది. And you already have a git which refers to last version. So the changes which you have done in your local repository also reflects to others. Okay, because here there is no server connection. Here everything is happening between .git folder and your local folders, and whenever you are zipping it, you are sending both. This might not happen on any other version control systems, because there you need to have connections to servers, especially on ClearCase it will not happen, but SVN I think it happens, right? If you have the .svn folder, I think it happens. Okay, but still you need to have connection to the server. But the whole point is, are we good on this now? So the only thing that matters to Git is .git folder and your folder contents. So as long as you're zipping and sending it, it would show the same change. Okay, so that is the philosophical difference between Git and all the other version control system. Migita version control system ade pani cheyakapovachu, because whenever you check out, you are checking out the files based out of your user commits and all of that, and you would have some dependency with the server. Here you don't have that. Okay, it is always .git folder and the contents which you have in your local folders. Wonderful. So first thing is done. Git reset hard. I want to remove, I don't want to have this change, so I'm just resetting it. So it will go back to the last pull which I have taken. Last pull which I have taken. So let me do git pull. So git push we understand, right? We are submitting our changes. Then what is this git pull? Okay. Remember, in git pull two things happen. Okay. They are called as fetch and merge. Whenever someone asks what is git pull, you should say it is git fetch plus git merge. Git fetch will pull the latest details from the server. Git merge will merge those changes to your branches. So our rendu commands could execute chese badalu, we are executing that in the form of one command, which is git pull. So what git pull does is it will connect to our remote. It will connect to your remote and it will fetch the changes. For example, I have two remotes. One is origin, the other one is origin 1. And if I want to pull the changes from origin 1, then I have to give something like git pull origin 1. If it is origin, there is no need for you to give, because origin is considered to be a default. That we have seen even in push, right? If you are on a master branch, then there is no need for you to worry about it. Git push. But if it is on any other branch, what is it? Git push origin and the branch's name. Okay, so that's the convention which we need to follow. Okay, so tags. Okay, so let me create a tag on the master branch. Let us assume that this is a release which we are giving to the customer. So I'd be writing git tag rel underscore 1.0. Okay, now let me just do git tag. So you have only one tag on your complete master branch, which is rel 1. Okay. Similarly, if I want to know list of branches that I have created that are already present, you have all of these branches, but there is one thing which is with star, which tells you about what is your current branch which you are operating on. I am in the master branch, so it is showing it as master. So let me do this. Git checkout sprint 2. Now let me execute git branch. Okay. Similarly, git remote. I have only one remote, which is origin. So this will give you list of what is happening. Git branch will give you a list of branches. Git tag will give you a list of tags. Git remote will give you list of remote servers which you can connect to. Okay. So this is understood right now. We can tag it, and whenever I want to go back to the tag, git checkout and give the tag name. You will always go back to that version, no matter wherever you are. Okay, fine. So what is the purpose of tag? Tag is to label your commit with something of importance. That something of importance might be given release to the testing team, given a customer release, bug was fixed, or a bug was found, something which is of importance, so that you should know in that version control system, then you would tag it. Okay, so what is tagging? Tagging is nothing but applying some label to your commit ID, nothing beyond it. Okay, and how are tags stored? Where are tags stored? Same place, git. Okay, and now in here, this is the place where you would be seeing all of the changes, right? So whenever you do git tag, okay, git tag is nothing but a tag that has been added. Refs tags and rel 1.1. So in this, what we'll have? Commit ID. That's it. So rel 1.0 is always tagged to a commit id, as simple as that. Okay. In git, everything is stored with respect to commit id, right? That we have seen with git cat file and -p commands and all of that. So everything is in here. Okay, fine. Okay, how does tagging work? Tagging is nothing but you are seeing here, right? It would create a tag section and it would create a file where tag is pointed to a commit id. So why is this useful? Because you can go back to that version just by tag name. There is no need for you to remember what branch it is, where I was working, all of that, nothing. You can directly go to that. Okay. Bhaskar around today? Okay. Rajesh, just give me 1 day of time. I think Bhaskar will resolve this issue. Okay. Just give me probably tomorrow he should be in and he should be able to resolve your issue. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So now the next important thing. So I'm working on this, some changes. Okay. Suddenly my manager comes to me and says that, okay, no, there is some important fix which you need to do. Work on that. Work on that. Okay. So let us see that behavior. I'd be working in the master branch itself. Okay. Just not to complicate things, but I can do the same thing in any branch. Okay. So git checkout master. Let us assume that I was working and I was changing some files. Edit. Okay. Working on something important. This is my change. Okay. And suddenly my manager comes to me and tells to me that, okay, you have been working on this, but there is other important issue which you need to fix. So I have just shown you a simple line of change that I can rewrite. But imagine that you have done work on many files. Okay. And what generally developers do at this point of time is they will put this folder like this and they would create another folder, git clone, and they would start working on it. And this folder is like this. So whenever they finish work on that, they would come back and they would start working. That's a general approach that is being followed in all other version controls. But let us see if we can do anything over here. Git stash. This is a command which can help us. But how it can help us? What is its syntax? Google it. Git stash. If you have a cheat sheet downloaded and present on your work desk, even that would help. There is no need for you to Google at that point. Okay. So git stash. Okay. And then git stash list, git stash show, git stash drop, git stash pop. You have loads and loads of things. Okay. And git stash push. Okay. Git stash is when you want to record the current state of working directory to and an index and want to go back to a clear working directory. So let me do git stash. Okay. And let me see my folder. Is there my change there? readme.txt లో నేను మార్చాను కదా, అది ఉందో లేదో చూద్దాం. ఉందా? లేదు. I don't have that changes because all of that I was working, I have stored at some other place in my local repository. So for that what I can do is git stash list. So you are seeing this, right? So whenever I want I finish my work on that, I can reapply these changes to my working directory. So that's how it operates. ఏంటి మనకు లోకల్ గా చేసిన చేంజెస్ అన్ని ఇప్పుడు కరెంట్ వేరే పని చేయాలి కాబట్టి what I would do git stash and they would be stored in stashes. But remember, this will be present only in your local git folder. It will not be present on your server. If you delete this folder, stash is gone. Always remember that, because we have not connected to the server. We have not sent this stash to the server. Stash is the local stuff. Okay. So whenever you are doing stashing, remember that you have to keep your folder, ensure that that folder will be there. If you mess up with that folder and delete that folder, your stash is gone. Okay. And now I want to basically get these changes back. Okay, so then I would be using git stash. Did I got my change back? Okay, let me see in this file. That is how it works. So do git stash, okay, and ask, finish whatever your manager has asked on the same directory, and then after that just use a command called as git stash apply. Done. So you would get back your changes. Okay, but there is one catch over here. So here it is a stack concept. Okay, so whatever goes in first will come out last. If you do git stash twice, okay, then you should go to git stash list and apply, and you have to give the name. Okay, but if you have only one stashing, one unit in stash, there is no need for you to worry about it. So you can just execute with git stash and then git stash apply and all of that stuff. It will be enough. But if you have if you have stored more than 3 or 4 contents, then you need to remember the IDs. For that, you would be using git stash list. You would get the name over there, and then you have to apply based out of those names. Okay. If you don't do that, you would be getting your last change, not the first change. మీరు పేరు ఇస్తే మీకు కావాల్సింది వస్తుంది, పేరు ఇవ్వకపోతే ఏది ఉందో అది వస్తుంది. Okay, so whenever you have done more than stashing more than once, then you always remember that you have to call it in an order, either by name. If you don't call it by name, whatever goes in last will come out first. It is a stack data structure, first in last out or last in first out. Yeah, okay, fine. So stashing, people don't use it too much because most of the people are unaware of this kind of a concept, and some people even if they are aware, they might be in an insecure position because the things are in his .git folder locally. If by chance if he deletes that folder, he might lose these changes. So they don't take a risk. But still, in Git, it is possible to create stashes. Okay, fine. Now there is something called as git stash push, but we have used git stash apply. Okay, the only difference between apply and push is, let me do git stash list now. Is my change still there? Okay, if I do pop, it will not be there. It will apply and it will delete the entry also. ఇక్కడ నుండి తీసేస్తుంది. Okay, git stash apply and it would just apply. It will not remove your stash 0. It will just keep it like that. So that's the difference between git stash pop and git stash apply. Okay, so always, generally, whenever you want to remove that changes also from the stash list, then use git stash pop. If you don't want to take a risk, then use git stash apply, because it will not be removing that from this list. Okay, so let me do this. Git reset hard. If I do git stash, okay, so it has applied the changes. Let me see git stash list. I don't have anything. It would remove that item also. That's the difference between git stash apply and git stash pop. Okay, are we getting it? Okay, this has never been asked in interviews also till now, but still it is a good concept for you, so that you can work in Git. You can save some changes locally. Okay, fine. Now we know stashing, okay, and we know tagging. There is something called as cherry picking. What do I mean by cherry picking? Okay, so let us do that. Get status, okay, and let me go to git checkout sprint 1. Okay, let me basically do something over here. So let me change that readme.md itself. Okay, so I'd be writing sprint 1 is completed. Okay, this on which branch I'm doing? Sprint 1. So get status, get add readme.md, get status, and get commit -m added readme. Are we good? Yeah. So now I'll be doing git log. So this is a commit, right? Let me copy this commit ID. Now let us assume that whatever commit which I have done on this branch, only that commit I want to apply on a different branch also. ఈ చేంజ్ నేను sprint 2 కూడా అప్లై చేయాలనుకుంటున్నాను. Okay, so then I can go to git checkout sprint 2 and git cherry pick. Oh, cherry hyphen pick. Okay, now get status and let us see what is in this branch now. Okay, I am in this branch, right? So whatever change I have done on that branch should not be over here. So let me edit it. Am I getting that change? So you can individually pick the commit IDs and apply it to whatever branches you want. That is cherry pick. Here you don't pick branches, you pick commit IDs. అలాగే నేను ఒకటి కాదు, more than one కూడా ఇవ్వచ్చు. Copy 3 commit IDs and write git cherry pick first commit ID space second commit ID, third commit ID. All of these 3 commits which belong to different branch will be applied to whatever branch which you are in right now. That is the concept of cherry picking. Okay. Similarly, basically this we would use especially in support projects too much. Support project, for example, you have done a commit ID where you have done a fix for Infosys. If that is valid also for TCS, then you would not redo the thing, merge the thing, because you are not supposed to merge. అంతే కదా, TCS branch నుండి Infosys branch కి merge చేయొచ్చా, which is supposed to be for TCS? That will not be appreciated by these people. So what you would do is only that change whatever you have done which is centric, you would try to cherry pick. Very much useful feature for support projects. Normal dev projects you might not see lot of implementation of it. Okay, so did we understood the concept of it? వేరే బ్రాంచ్ లో చేసిన కమిట్ ని ఈ బ్రాంచ్ కి అప్లై చేసుకోవాలంటే rather than merging the branch, take only that commit ID. Okay, but whenever you merge, you are merging every change, all of the changes, but here you are not interested in all. Okay, for example, copyright change, you have changed your icon change. Okay, so that you have done on one branch, and rest of the branch you cherry pick it, because icon is something which no one messes up with. So these are the kind of things which you can do with cherry picking, where you can pick your commit IDs and then apply them to different branches. That's a whole concept around cherry picking. Okay, fine. What are the other areas? What are this? Tags, stash, cherry pick, rebase, okay, and then hooks. Okay, so rebase. Okay, fine. So rebase is something like this. Let me show it visually what happens in rebase. Okay, I have this one branch. Okay, from this branch I have basically created one more branch and I am working on it. Okay, and this branch also someone else is working on it. Okay, and this commit whatever he has done is a very important commit, and you want to get that change again. So one way is merge from here to here, and you would be getting that change. Okay, the other way of looking at this is rebasing. So in rebasing, what you would do is you would have this. Actually, you have created your commit ID over here, but when you rebase, okay, it would look like this, as if you have created a branch not from here but from here. Okay, are we getting it? This works only for the branches basically where it does not appear as if you have committed or taken a branch earlier, but you have taken a commit later. అంటే ఈ చేంజెస్ మొత్తం తీసుకొచ్చి దీని కింద పెడితే ఎలా బిహేవ్ చేస్తుందో రీబేస్ అలాగే బిహేవ్ చేస్తుంది. So shall we hypothetically simulate this scenario? Yeah. So what I would do is, let me create two branches. From sprint 2, I would be creating sprint 2.1. Okay. So git checkout sprint 2.1. Okay. I can't give 2.1. What is happening? Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. Okay. And then let me just change some file. Okay. So git checkout sprint 2. I want to go to sprint 2. And in here, I want to modify my readme.md. And I want to write sprint 2 is in progress, something like this. Okay. And git status. Okay. Git add readme.md. Git commit -m added status or something like that. Okay. So I have this change. Okay. ఒక్క changes repick చేసేయచ్చు కదా? Yes, you can. But imagine that you have more changes. Okay. There are many alternatives. You can choose whatever fits for you. I can do merge. I can do cherry pick. Okay. Now what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to rebase. Okay. So what I would do is git checkout sprint 2.1, and I would say git rebase sprint 2. So what it is trying to telling? First rewinding head to replay work on top of it. Fast forward sprint 2.1 to sprint 2. Okay. Now let me go to the readme.md file over here. Yes. Am I seeing sprint 2 is in progress? Okay. So there are multiple ways of achieving it. Generally, you do rebasing whenever you have missed the place where you created a branch is not supposed to be that. It should be supposed to be somewhere else. You want all the branches changes. అంటే ఒక చేంజ్ కాదు, 100 చేంజ్లు ఉన్నా ఆ sprint 2 లో మీరు క్రియేట్ చేసినప్పటి నుండి మీరు బ్రాంచ్ క్రియేట్ చేసినప్పుడు ఏముంది? let us assume that when we created a branch, it was at version 1, and after that there were 99 changes and they are at 100. So you can't cherry pick all the commits, right? It is difficult. So what you do is the rebase. So whenever you rebase, it will appear all these changes will be merged, and it will appear that you have created a branch after 100th version. So that's how it behaves. But remember, whenever you are doing this is a very useful operation, but there are chances that you might lose history of creating the older branch. Your actual branch was created during commit ID was 1, but now it shows as commit ID is 100. This operation where you have done rebase, okay, this will not be shown. This will not be shown in history. You have to explicitly write it. That is the only flaw of rebase. Okay, మీరు 1 నుండి ఒకప్పుడు బ్రాంచ్ క్రియేట్ చేశారన్న విషయం ఉండదు ఎక్కడ. That portion of history you might lose it. Okay, so that is a danger. If you are maintaining everything, that is a problem. If your company does not basically like that approach. Okay, so that's why some of the companies don't do rebases, they do merges. Okay, it's your company stand. There is nothing about right or wrong. See, for achieving the similar functionality, I have used three different ways, right? One is merge, the other one is cherry pick, the third one is rebase. Okay, so rebase is more effective. Okay, cherry pick is when you have multiple commits and you want only some commits out of it. Cherry picking. Merge Yeah, is a traditional way, much more a traditional way. Everyone does that much. Okay, Git has these two ways of looking at it: cherry picking and rebasing. Are we good? So rebasing is just bringing all of the changes and creating as if your branch looks like that you have created after all of those changes. Okay. Here you might get conflicts. All of that is common. Merge conflicts didn't out. You have to correct it then. You have to correct it and then start working on that. Okay. Fine. Now, before moving to the last topic, do we have any doubts till whatever we have discussed right now? Can I create two sprint1 branches under int1 and int2? Okay. See, generally, whenever you do that, right, you cannot have branches with same names. So even though you are creating it under int1 or int2, but Git maintains all of its branches as one. So you cannot have two sprint1 branches. So if you want, you can do int1 underscore sprint1, int2 underscore sprint1. That is possible, but don't use same names. Okay. How many multiple developers will get the access onto the same branches and how to control access? You can give to as many as possible. Okay, because there is nothing that is harming until this guy pushes. దీంట్లో మనకి ఎంతమంది అయినా ఇబ్బంది ఎందుకు రాదు? He is not working on server, he is working on his local version. Okay, and before committing he is doing git pull and then sending it. So your server has very less load when compared to all the other version control servers. Okay, so there is parallelism is your scaling. You can go to any limit. Okay, if you see GitHub and if you see our Git classroom samples, at a time even 10,000 people access it, nothing happens. Nothing happens because it is all about getting your .git folder, and once you get the .git folder, people are working on it locally on their machines without interacting with server. So number of people will not have an impact. Yeah, how to control the access? Okay, so how to control the access is basically being done in two different ways. One, when you put this in a web server, you can have your own control by saying that only this people can write it and this people can read it. Okay, but generally in every Git repository, read permission is given to everyone. By everyone I mean, if your Git server is in your office, everyone in your team will be able to read the code. They will be able to clone the code, but they will not be able to push the code. Push is the place where you need permission. Okay, push is the place where you need permission, and permissions are handled in two ways. One is using the famous HTTP protocol or SSH protocol. Your user keys will be added, and for that you need your server should have that mechanism. Okay, how can a Git repository become a server? All of that happens due to one component called as daemon. What is daemon? Daemon is a background service. Daemon is much like a Windows service, okay, which runs in the background. So this daemon service, and to this daemon service you would have all of the access control. So that's the only thing which you can do. Okay, so whenever you are saying GitHub as a server, GitHub is nothing but much like a Git folder what we have on a Linux machine plus daemon. Okay, that daemon, the web application of Git or the GitHub which we are seeing the local pages, it knows how to speak with that daemon. So that's the reason why we have this stuff. But there are many open source servers which you can use in your office without paying to anyone. One of that is something called as Gitolite. If you use this, right, you can install this in your office and there is no need to pay licenses to anyone. Pick up a Linux server, follow the instructions, okay, create a Gitolite server, and then you would be able to basically create a server. Okay, but in Gitolite there are two ways that are supported, both HTTP and SSH, and SSH is more popular. Okay, so regarding creation of these keys, we would be anyway looking into master slave setup. Then I would revisit on creating SSH keys. I do not want to go over this, but for the people who know what SSH keys are, in SSH I can use a command called as SSH keygen and I can create a keys, right? Then I would be getting two keys, pub key and a private key. Okay, so I would be giving one of this key with the server, and one key I would put it in my local system, and whenever I'm sending a GET request, I will sign the request with the private key, and your server will be solving that request with the public key, and that's how it will access or accept your authentication. I'll not get into that in too much detail as on today, okay, but this is how the stuff works. Okay, wonderful. Let me see the other questions. All the vagrant questions, right? Let us do one thing. Let us have altogether a different session to discuss it. అదేదో నాకు అప్పులాగా ఉండిపోయింది. రోడ్డు మీద ఎవరు కనపడినా బాకీ అడుగుతారు, ఎప్పుడెత్తావు వడ్డీ అన్నట్టు. The vagrant is not working. Okay, so all of your problems, I'll have a session of half an hour this weekend, and let us resolve this. ఇది నిజంగా నాకు అప్పులాగా అనిపిస్తుంది. Sometime when we are discussing and suddenly I see vagrant is not working. Oh, is it? I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry with all due respect to HashiCorp. Okay, fine. So just send your errors, and then let us see if Bhaskar can resolve it. Whatever is left over the weekend, I'm spending half an hour from. I will come. I'll not come at. I'll be here after 11 o'clock. 11 to 12 I'll be here. Whether it is Saturday or Sunday, I'm not sure, but on one day I'll be here. You just bring your vagrant problems. If virtualization is not enabled and if you are showing me errors, you are wasting my time. ఓకే, వర్చువలైజేషన్ ఎనేబుల్ అయిందో లేదో తెలియకుండా జస్ట్ కమాండ్స్ మీరు కొట్టారు వర్క్ అయింది, నేను కొట్టాను వర్క్ అవ్వట్లేదు అంటే నేనేం చేయలేను దాన్ని. ఓకే, ఫస్ట్ సీ ద బేసిక్ రిక్వైర్మెంట్స్ వెన్ ఎవర్ యూర్ వర్కింగ్ విత్ వర్క్. ఈజ్ వర్చువలైజేషన్ ఎనేబుల్డ్ ఆన్ యువర్ మెషిన్? ఓకే, if virtualization is enabled on your machine, create a VirtualBox, create one virtual machine manually. See if it is working. If it is working, VirtualBox manually also, and then vagrant is not working, then come to me. Are we clear? And if you don't know how to basically create VirtualBox's local machine, right? Okay, so you watch YouTube for all the stuff, right? There are many videos in YouTube which shows how to create a Linux machine from VirtualBox. Just see that and create it. And if you prove me that both of the things are working, then I would show you a fix for whatever problems which you are trying. Okay, నా దాంట్లో వర్చువలైజేషన్ ఎనేబుల్ అయ్యిందంటే వర్చువల్ మెషిన్ కూడా క్రియేట్ అవుతుంది మాన్యువల్ గా చేసినప్పుడు, కానీ vagrant నుండి అవ్వట్లేదు. I can resolve it. If these two are not happening, you can't blame vagrant because your source softwares are not working. You are getting my point, right? ఈ రెండు వర్క్ అవ్వకపోతే vagrant వర్క్ అవ్వదు. ఓకే, ఏం చేసినా వర్క్ అవ్వదు. ఫైన్. Our last topic, get hooks. Okay, okay, generally there are two kinds of hooks: local hooks and server hooks. Okay, local hooks and server hooks. Basically, why do we use this hooking is, for example, whenever you do git commit, the message which appears, you want to change that message. Whenever you commit a message, you want to send an email. So you want to do some extra action after performing some git action, then we would be using hooks. Local hooks are something local to you, and local hooks cannot be committed to server. Okay, they are present only with you. But when we have server hooks, okay, server hooks are something like this. Whenever someone pushes the message, you want to send all of your testers a message saying that okay, there is a new commit that has been done, so be ready for testing. That you can do. Okay, so whenever some commit happens on your release branch, okay, you are sending a mail to all of your managers saying that there is a commit that has been done onto your release branch, so kindly check if it is authentic. If it is authentic, please inform your customer, something like that. Okay, so it is not a traditional git action, but you want to achieve something more out of it, then you would be using hook. And hooking is hooking your git action to something external. Okay, and there are two kinds of hooks: local hooks and server hooks. Okay, and let us just look into different events for this. Git hooks. Okay, this is very much important. Server side hooks, local hooks, I'll come back to it later. Pre-receive, when someone pushes it and that push is yet not applied to server, you would get this event. So git hooks low pre-receive, if you write a script, a shell file you can write, okay, you can write a Perl script, you can write Python, whatever you want, okay, and it would be able to do whatever action you want. So in pre-receive, if I write a code for sending a mail, that would be called, that would be performed, okay. Similarly, update script is very much similar to pre-receive script, but it is run once the branch pusher is trying to update, okay. It is done only once, okay, whenever the update happens. But post receive is what we use majorly, okay. Post receive is after the entire process is completed, you want to basically send notification, okay. You want to build that whatever has been pushed. For example, we are pushing Java code and developers have pushed the Java code, and after they push it successfully, you want to build it. So from Git, if you want to send a notification to your build system saying that everything is ready, you can start building. So that you would be using in the server hooks. So this is for sending notifications. It can be anything, or it can be just writing logs, who has done this and all of that. You can write whatever you want, okay, and you can write shell scripts over there, Perl scripts over there, Python scripts over there, anything which runs on Linux, okay. If it is a Linux server, if it is Windows, you can also do that. You can write batch files and execute batch programs also, okay. So these three are very popular, and these three are generally used on your servers, okay. And these are the scripts which will send you mails whenever you see in some of your friends laptop saying that, okay, a commit has been done on this, okay. Whenever something fails, merge has been failed, all of this. Git doesn't have all of this intelligence. Git gets this intelligence by using this hooks and the additional code which these guys write, okay. So దీంట్లో మనం పెద్దగా చేసేది ఏమీ లేకపోయినా అసలు అట్లీస్ట్ దీని గురించి తెలియాలి. హుక్ అంటే ఏంటి? హుక్ is some external program which you want to call based out of some action that is happening on the repository. And Git hooks are of two categories, local and server. Most important is server. In local, you generally don't write hooks, okay, until unless you are doing something very specific, okay. Server hooks are quite common. You would generally use that post receive hook, and there you would have an email notification. That is almost in every company, okay. And if you want to see the hooks, okay, so let me go into our .git, and there is already a folder called as hooks, and in there are a lot of examples. These are examples, okay. You can look into any one of the example. For example, pre-receive sample. So he's writing some code over, okay. The first line is very, very important. You need to tell this, saying that this is a shell script, this is a Python script, this is a Perl script, that is called a shebang, and you should be writing that. For example, if you are using Python there, you should be giving Python, the shebang related to Python, okay. So he's just telling that this is how you write the script, okay, and once you write this, during every commit this will happen, and here if you write whatever code which in shell script to do whatever action, that would be performed, okay. These are samples, these are not real stuffs, okay. But whenever you say hooking is all about writing shell scripting and attaching it to one of the event of Git, okay, fine. And now let me come to my local hooks, okay. So let me see this Atlassian Git. You can see all of this. He's just telling that you can use any hooks and all of that stuff. Yeah. So local hooks have these events. You will not have all of this in server. So you would have pre-commit before you commit, okay, and then pre-commit message. You can change the message of whatever happens when you commit, when you basically hook to that, okay. And then commit message, you can change the commit message. For example, whatever commit message which you are getting right now, you can alter all of that using, if you have hooked to that. And then commit, after commit, what is it has to have. And then checkout, whenever you do checkout, this should happen, and rebase. These are the basic kind of hooks which we use in local sections, and local hooks are used very rarely. Don't even worry about them. The hooks that are very popular and which are very much in use are server hooks. Okay, because server hooks is informing, local hooks is all about you, all about your system, but server hook is about your team. Whoever is accessing that gate, you need to inform all of them. So server hooks మీద ఎక్కువ పని ఉంటుంది, దీని మీద పెద్దగా ఏమి ఉండదు. Okay, even if you have, you can do it for fun. No one really, because your changes in local hooks will not be applied to others. It is local to you always, and then there is no point in doing all of that. Okay, fine. So hook is hooking a git action to an external script or external executable. That's the whole point around. Okay, hooking గురించి కూడా చాలా తక్కువగా అడుగుతారు, but at least if you ask, the minimum amount of safe game which you can tell is we have one email hook, okay, on post commit, which is already being written. I know where it is written, but never worked on anything. If you really don't want to get it, but at least you should know what a hook is. And I'm quite sure that the people who are from Subversion know hooks very well, because this is the concept taken from there. In Subversion, the best part is hooks. You have a hell lot of hooks, and it is mostly like Subversion, but in terms of hooks, but it is Subversion hooks are much popular or much stronger than this. Fine, or I would not say much stronger, but I would say that there is lot of development already has been done on that hooks, and there you would find Subversion hooks very simply. Subversion hook to raise a Jira ticket on commit, you would get all of that, because that has been there in market for loads and loads of time. Okay, very soon you might see most of the stuff in Git also, but very soon you might see more stronger hook scripts. Okay, no one writes this hook scripts from scratch. They would try to reuse whatever they have right now. Okay, fine. But most popular hooking is done in two scripts, shell and Python. Shell or Python. Okay, they would write either shell script or a Python script for achieving this. Okay, fine. After any check-in, I need to send a mail to developers. Wonderful. You just have to hook it, and in the hook script you need to write your mail sending code, email sending code. Git will not provide you email sending code. You have to write it with Subversion. For example, if you have used GitHub, you create your account, and for every commit, okay, and you give it the permission to some other person in GitHub, and if that person commits, you would get a mail. How is that happening? With Git hooks, especially with post commit hook. Okay, so that's what you can do. Okay, how about migrating from any other version control system to Git? Subversion to Git is the most easiest migration. Most easiest. Okay, most difficult migrations are from the earlier Subversion control systems, like, because you have the same concepts in Subversion also. For example, in Subversion also you have branches. Okay, you have something called as trunk, which is very much related to your master right now. Okay, so Subversion to Git migration, there are already a hell lot of tools, open source tools available. You can directly use them. But the difficult part is whenever you choose to go with the other version control systems like ClearCase, VSS, okay, then it is not a simple migration. You can't do it with one click. You have to be that becomes a project actually. When you want to migrate from any other version control system to Git, it becomes a project, because first thing is there is a lot of difference with respect to the mindset of how version control systems work. Okay, for example, in our company we are trying to migrate from ClearCase to Git from the past 1 year. ClearCase was in use for last 15 years, and they have developed a hell lot of tooling around it. And it is not ClearCase that is creating the problem. ClearCase chuttu will rasin tools maku problem, because these tools are very well written with only ClearCase in mind. That's how you do, right? If I am writing Git tools, I would be worrying only about Git. Will I worry about, okay, in the future there might be the other version control system which will come and shall let us write an optimized script? That was not the case. Now what has happened is there are some traditional differences. For example, in Git, right, you can't basically take some folders. అంటే నేను ఎస్ఆర్సి డాక్ ఉన్నాయి కదా మన దాంట్లో, నేను క్లోన్ చేసినప్పుడు నాకు ఎస్ఆర్సి ఫోల్డర్ మాత్రమే రావాలి, డాక్ రాకూడదు. నేనేం చేయలేను. ఇన్ గిట్ ఇట్ ఈస్ నాట్ పాసిబుల్, బట్ ఇన్ క్లియర్ కేస్ ఇట్ ఈస్ పాసిబుల్, అండ్ దే హ్యావ్ బీన్ యూజింగ్ క్లియర్ కేస్ లైక్ దట్, which is not traditionally what Git is all about. So these are the kind of complexity. So it is whenever you are migrating, right, if it is a simple migration, everyone uses every folder, wonderful, not very pain. But there are some customizations like which are against Git. For example, getting only specific folders on commit, not possible. Okay, నాకు ఎస్ఆర్సి ఒకటే కావాలి, డాక్స్ అవసరంలా, కుదరదు, not possible, not at all possible. But this is possible in some version control systems. Okay, and there is some feature called as locking. So whenever you are working on a hot fix, you can go to that file, right click and lock it, and say that so that no one in your company will be working on that file again until you finish the commit, because you are working on some hot fix. Okay, this is not possible in Git, cannot be done, because you have everything on your local version. The only way for you to do it is via external communication. Send a mail to everyone saying that I am working on this file, so please don't push your changes. That's the only thing which you can do. So we are having these kind of difficulties. You're getting my point, right? There are, if it is all about just version control system, will not have problem. If it is about practices like this, if it is about practice that saying that, okay, we have 8 customers, for 8 customers different folder structures, not possible. Git cannot do that. It cannot do that. Okay, so for that, how we are managing is we are using hooks. Okay, so whenever the post commit happens on this hook, whenever pre-commit happens on this hook, whenever checkout happens on this hook, just have this example where it tries to do something. Okay, so that's the whole point. So whenever you are migrating to Git, there is one challenge which we have faced, and I have seen a lot of times. People, rather than moving to Git, okay, let us assume that we are moving from Subversion to Git. They want all the Subversion features in Git rather than searching what is new in Git. That's the biggest hurdle. Okay, ఈ కొత్త ఫీచర్ల గురించి ఎవరు ఆలోచించాడు అంటే, గిట్లో స్టాష్ ఉందండి, అనవసరానికి నేను బ్రాంచ్ క్రియేట్ చేసినప్పుడు కొత్త ఫోల్డర్ వస్తుందా రాదా అని అడుగుతాడు. బ్రాంచ్ క్రియేట్ చేసినప్పుడు కొత్త ఫోల్డర్ రావడం వల్ల సబ్వర్షన్ వే ఆఫ్ వర్కింగ్. In Git, you would be getting the same code in the same folder, and this guy doesn't like it, so you can't help it. So ilanti challenges we can't overtake. But if it is just about working code, there are many tools around. Okay, migrating from TFS Git to TFS to Git, migrating from Subversion to Git, there are many tools around which you can use directly. But if your developer practices are against the Git basic Git's conventions, then you have to seriously look into and discuss with them and then find it. That is what is happening with us. Okay, these guys want Git to behave exactly like clear case, which will never does. Git ni clear case laga behave cheyalante nenu em chesina avadu, nenu raskoవాలి kotta tool. Git will never behave like clear case, because clear case is a client server tool. This is a distributed kind of a tool. You can't get it. And there is one problem with Git is, there is one problem. If someone asks what is the problem which you have seen with Git, okay, so if you have very large binary files, for example like Ubuntu ISOs, and for example GBs of binary files, text file aithe parla, text file as GB kudadu first of all. But if you have these files, right, whenever you do Git basic commands, they would perform very slowly. Okay, if your repository has very large binary files, the performance of Git will come down. Remember, this is one problem which we have seen. This is the only problem which I have seen with Git, or I should put it in this way. మీరు Git file లో పెద్ద binary files పెట్టకండి. It is against the design of Git. Okay, Git is supposed to be for code. Okay, and binary files decent. See, MBs is fine, Putting GBs of binary file in a code repository doesn't make sense. Okay. For example, if I create a Git repository with Red Hat ISO and Ubuntu ISO, and then I do Git, it would be very slow. Git diff cheste chala time padutundi, because it has to calculate hashes and then check out it. The git cat file -p, right? It takes forever. That's the whole point around it. So Git is not meant for very large binary files. Okay. Oh man. Fine. So continuous integration. Okay, we would be looking into Git there also, because in continuous integration without source control, nothing will happen. Okay, so it is nothing but CentOS 7. CentOS/7 is nothing but an image. Okay, okay. Ubuntu Trusty 64 again vagrant. So CentOS/7 is a CentOS 7 image. CentOS 7 image box. Okay. So Ubuntu comes with names for giving its versions. Ubuntu Trusty 64 is Ubuntu 14. Okay. But CentOS doesn't have that convention. They would go with the numbers: CentOS 6, CentOS 5, and CentOS 7. CentOS/7 is a box for CentOS which has an operating system version of 7. That's it. Okay. Fine. So I thought that I would be installing Jenkins today itself. Okay. But let me show you a very simple alternative of using that. Okay. First thing is Jenkins.io. Okay. And you are seeing download, right? In download, always take LTS release. Okay. And then if you are seeing, take a generic package. Okay. Download this file. Okay. I am not going to do download because it is already available with me. Okay. Download this WAR file. Okay. Ensure that you have Java 7 installed on your machine. So how to install Java 7? ఎలా చేస్తాం? ఎంతమంది ఇప్పటివరకు అసలు జావా ఇన్స్టాల్ చేయాలా? Okay, go to Google and search it. As simple as that. Okay, if you are on a Windows machine, it is much simpler. Download a MSI file and double click it and click next until it says that I am done. Okay, so I am showing you a way of working in Jenkins. But remember, this way is only for exploring Jenkins. ఇప్పుడు నేను చూపించే విధానం. Actually, on your servers, you will not be running this way. Okay, so open any command prompt. Okay, ensure you have Java installed. Okay, Java -jar Jenkins.war. Okay, I think I have Jenkins already running. Okay, Java -jar. There is some problem, guys, but you install Jenkins and try to do this on your machine. Okay, and then you basically go to localhost :8080 and you would be seeing the first page of Jenkins. Okay, so tomorrow we'll be looking into how to, this is just a way to explore Jenkins. Okay, I think I know the reason why it is failing. Let me just, I didn't want to get into technical details. That's the whole point around it. Users, Lenovo. There is some other issue. Okay, so I'll correct it tomorrow. I'll not today. I don't even have a time to look into this error and tell it what it is. But this is called as a way where you basically use it for dev environments or debugging. If you want to run Jenkins quickly on your machine, this is the most easiest way. But the way which you would be following is we would be installing it on a Linux machine and then using it from our Windows machine. Let that Linux machine be an Amazon EC2 or a Vagrant machine, whatever it is. Okay, So we would be starting with that. Tomorrow we would be starting with what is continuous integration. Okay. Once we understand that continuous integration and we know how to install Jenkins, then we would be going into how to build code manually. And then we would be doing that building of code in Jenkins. Okay. So we would be using Java mostly, and we would also be doing one sample with any other language. Okay. So just to make a point that it is uh, if you know build steps, you can automate anything in Jenkins. That's the whole point which I want to try to prove and make it work. Okay. And in this process, we will be learning about building the code, testing the code. Okay. How to do that. Okay. And what are the different kinds of testings that you have to bare minimum follow whenever you are building the code. Okay. And static code analysis. Okay. And then how do you release whatever you have built to some other server? So something like Nexus Artifactory, we would be looking into JFrog, because these days I'm seeing a lot of people speaking about JFrog. Let me do that. Okay, fine. So that's what our discussion would be from tomorrow for the next 4 or 5 days. Okay, and monitoring we would be discussing during the next cycle. I'll not be touching monitoring this time. Okay, after we finish Packer, let us discuss monitoring. Terraform, Packer, and then we would be discussing on monitoring. Okay, so this time we'll be discussing only on CI till this Sunday, because there is one more holiday coming up. There's Bakrid somewhere around this weekend, so I can't have a class on that day, so it will not become realistic for me to even think of monitoring. So let us finish this CI and think of monitoring during the next cycle. Okay, fine guys. So I'm stopping my class at that, and let us meet tomorrow. Yeah, fine.